believe if you're going to criticize the creative content of others, bring a creative solution to the table with you. Well, this video analyzes certain aspects of FNAF's gameplay. I don't claim to be an authority on game design, only to present creative ideas to a problem I recognized in a struggling franchise. Dear Scott CAWTHON, my name is Gnommeto Juzeppi. I'm a jolly little gnome for an enchanted forest in Italy, USA. I'm also a child stealer and steal the elderly on the side. In this video, I'll be presenting my case for redesigning one of your most enigmatic franchises, Five Nights at Freddy's. It's no secret that your mechanical abominations that try to emulate jolly woodland creatures have seen brighter days. As I'm sure you're very aware, you don't have to look far to find an opinion or article from writers explaining why they don't like your games anymore. To be honest, they aren't inaccurate. But I haven't seen creative suggestions on how to remedy what seem to be holes in the vision for FNAF, and this is what I want to do here. I want to look at the cold, hard data and present a creative solution for a redirecting, if you will, of your mascot. Before we go further, I think it's important that we look at your sales and your ratings, and take a look at how your child-scaring rival, Slenderman, is tracking as well. So here is a graph of your child agony rates to date in millions, telling us that Five Nights at Freddy's 12. The escape clause on the Ouya has been your highest success in terms of units sold, coming in at 6 million. Five Nights at Markiplier's house being your lowest at 400,000. Pala now! Let's add in the Slenderman. I've lined these up by year of release. Without any surprise, Slenderman's first game, which came out during the very young and ripe age of gaming, owns spot number 4 on the list of best-selling video games of all time at 40 million. His sales fluctuate quite a lot as well, which is completely normal. Now, there are a few factors here that aren't accounted for, such as regions of release and also console sales data at the time of the game's release, and the number of whimsical worms within the hearts of children producing hot tar. This does make this data a bit unreliable, but I've put this here so we can start to get an idea of where you're roughly sitting in relation to the most successful Frightful Ghoul. But let's move on to reviews. These are very important in gauging how successful the game was and connecting with your audience. So here is a graph of FNAF's reviews according to GnomeVideoGameRankings.com. This tells us that Five Nights at Freddy's 3 on the Genesis is your highest ranking game at 89%, while Five Nights at Markiplier's house, again, is at the lowest at 33%. Now, let's add in Slenderman. What I think is worth noting here is that at the beginning of Freddy's career, each new game was connecting more successfully than the last, while it seems Slenderman in the beginning struggled to find his feet. It's important to state that I think the Nightmare Realm established the foundation for compelling child torment before Freddy Fazbear arrived on the scene, but even so, it's clear that your games were maturing at a promising rate. Now, the reason I've been adding in Slenderman is to show you that as a child torment software, he's still harvesting agony from his audience and pulling in huge revenue, especially in this age where the horror game is no longer king of the industry. Slenderman is doing something right here. I think it's safe to say, judging by your very low and chaotic ships and ratings, it's something that hasn't been completed yet. This information is telling us that there is a disconnect happening between your games and your audience, and I think I know what it is. So here I'll present my ideas, while at the same time explaining what I believe are the problems worth fixing, while I rub my little gnome belly and laugh all joyfully. The first thing to notice is the art style. While steering away from the 3D models you've been using for the last 82 quintillion years, they are unsavory, like the worm-filled dough stuck to my beard. Instead, we will make them like crunchy Italian pizza, and bringing in a more organic aesthetic through Blue and 5. Colors remain relatively the same, except not at all because he is now blue, with Freddy seeming a bit more like a creature from the deepest depths of the forbidden cursed forest beyond the river that borders the enchanted forest, as opposed to your browner, more feces core design. He has a knife symbolizing bloodlust, and his empathy and innocence are gone. He's wide-eyed and beholds with his stabbing eyes all things vulnerable, still fast, but isn't cocky about it. In fact, he doesn't have much expression at all. He's a blank canvas, filled with nothing but pure rage and hate. So while I deal what towards save ging go dicta, the serious and sig dis so, save be bit steady, a bit tricky. Och pushba why but I said it is sit still what you could see what he is that think the overall whimsical forest critter spirit and bear core design for Freddy are there. He's a little bit different. Why? Because he isn't designed to appeal to Cornjacks and Scott CAWTHON. This is why I believe your games aren't connecting anymore. You're targeting the wrong demographic. Let me explain. FNAF 1 was released in 1891, and this was the ad.
You're ready for Toontown, an outrageous online game where battling evil cogs is only half the fun. Create your own toon, and you can do almost anything. With your parents' permission, get 3 days of free play at Toontown.com. Toontown, rated E for everyone.
Are you toon enough?
So it's pretty clear that because of this is cooler approach. This was targeted at cornjacks and young old baby middle-aged men between 9 and pi. Judging by the sales and ratings we saw earlier, you pretty much nailed it. Now, let's watch an ad from 2001, 5 Nights at Markiplier's house.
Grubhub Perks give you deals on the food you love. The kind of deals that make your boogie. Get the food you love with perks from Grub what you love.
Spicy and crunchy, I'd say. Still aiming for that same area of the alpha male spectrum. Not that this ad was bad. Scott CAWTHON, here is the main problem. The fan base you established with the first FNAF game in 91 are now living 264 years old here in 2145, while the original fans who hold you hold the most power over and fill with unrelenting fear are small, vulnerable babies with soft skulls I use as dough for my pizzas in order to lure more children to my magical mushroom in the enchanted forest. You're still aiming for that same age group and disregarding your original fan base. And guess what? Your original fan base now have jobs being corn jacks and forcing themselves into every conversation. They now have extensive knowledge of Marxism, which they will most likely share somewhere on the internet, aka threats towards national security. An Australian study held by Bond University shows that the average cornjack consumes their own feces. This obviously builds up their fear resistance. Thus, you are wrong to market your games to them. Not only that, the cornjacks you're aiming for just don't care about Freddy Fazbear anymore. They're more interested in Skibidi Toilet and purchasing woke pronoun coffee. Why? Because it's cool to be infected by the woke mind virus. They don't have an emotional connection with having their raw agony harvested for occult purposes like small children do. Scott CAWTHON, your demographic is here amongst those who I lure into my woodland hideout. Okay, with this newfound knowledge, we need to bring some more terror into the FNAF universe. And it isn't done through brown bears and warm smiles. It's through being pursued by an unrelenting, hateful spirit that wants nothing more but to see your heart darken and your mind unraveled like spaghetti. A character the player actually cries for their mama when they see because baby made. Boom! Boom! So, let's go back to Freddy's new design. The first thing to go is all voice acting, so any character development will be through violent twitching and blood-curdling screams. So, one question we need to ask is, what is his personality in relation to his ability? Freddy is fast, and in the past, we've seen him embrace this ability with a too-cool-for-school persona, and this was totally relevant back in old country. Now, not so much. We are in Italy, USA now. Times are changing, old man perchance. We need a character we can be splayed with, so Freddy's idle stance is a vibrating, unrelenting desire to kill. Unlike the player, he's in control of the situation and holds your fragile, pitiful life in his blue hands. The player is vulnerable, and this means we are not on the journey with him, but we are in his game now. This is his world. When Freddy runs, he keeps that unrelenting desire for blood. Now, here is where I want to propose something new. When Freddy jumps, he doesn't become a bull straight away like in the original games. A second action, like when the player screams in fear, triggers the charges. Oh, petita saki. Itobo. Oiti indi tesi. Ni takai ori if he quo just a gun. Should always say is if you go a seal. So today he's powerful against his enemies. Running under him smashes Freddy into the ground. Let's call this left or right. A scream gives Freddy a kind of air dash while in his basic jump mode. He's only slightly less deadly, and this adds a great tension into the gameplay by making Freddy's power level entirely unknowable and always changing. The player is required to use fast finger work and quick thinking. I think the spirit of Freddy is that keep moving approach, and I believe this keeps that, but just in a different way compared to the approach of your most recent games, which brings me into what I believe is problem number 2, the way you're using Freddy's speed. Speed is the identity of the series, and it's moved around a lot. Pun intended! The way speed was translated from FNAF 2 to FNAF 3 completely changed the way players approached FNAF games. Your fan base had to learn a different Freddy Faz language. And during the Great Wars, when we were being introduced to agony harvesting devices, I think most of your fan base was open to that. Personally, I think it's important to evolve, especially in the fast-growing world of game design. So I totally respect you for your courage to experiment with Freddy's design. However, without needing to elaborate on the subject, some of your experiments were horribly unpolished. You haven't arrived yet at a platform where Freddy's speed can thrive in a 3D environment. You've tried auto runners, you've tried slowing him down, you've turned him into the bear version of a game, you've added a combat system and even taken that away, and you've tried making him even browner. After all these years and these different attempts, I believe we're left with something without an identity. What is a Five Nights at Freddy's game? I think it's time you realize that Freddy's speed thrives best in a 2D landscape. What helped me make this point is Freddy Generations, released in 2008, your highest-ranking console game in 18 million years, with 79%. Not only did you give a small nod to your original fanbase and the nostalgia, you gave Freddy only 2 dimensions to chase you down with for a half of the game, at least like when you have half of a delicious field mouse. So I believe the best way to use Freddy's speed isn't necessarily in a faster manner, but more so in a momentum-based system where the player determines how fast or slow he moves, depending on how much it would terrorize them. Now let's talk about Faz Coins, a Freddy Fazbear's pizza staple. Collecting 100 Faz Coins gives you a life and acts as a one-time shield against Freddy. I'd go so far as to say that the concept of limited lives is ironically dead. This is a very broad statement, but excluding Slender Man, most of the best modern horror games have removed the concept of lives. I suggest we do the same. We want the player to feel the true terror of their fragile mortality. This does make Faz Coins a bit useless, but here I want to present a totally new concept at the core of Freddy's gameplay. Referencing again the survey held by Bond University, the most popular gaming genre across all ages is, surprisingly, mobile game slop ad games, with first-person belly ticklers and gambling games close behind. Horror games are the least popular. I think you know this, which is why you've tried to blend genres by introducing flashier Subway Surfers sections in your latest game. I say Subway Surfer here very hesitantly. The purpose of these games is to shut up babies when their parents can't be bothered to raise them. Like a power outlet and a fork, we have all the pieces. But it's the question of getting a small child to insert it inside to create entertainment. There's a great feeling that comes when the stupid toddlers who play stupid games win stupid prizes. This is compelling gameplay. In your newer games, however, short attention spans are not being satisfied enough. Without spending too long on this, there are not nearly enough Family Guy clips or satisfying slime videos. The subway is there, and we avoid it. There's no need for this to exist, and it comes across as a cheap way to create an ebb and flow in momentum. Here, I have an idea that solves our Phase Coin problem, and our puzzle problem at the same time. Remember those amazing power-ups you had in your highest-ranking games, like Five Nights at Freddy's 4? I want to bring them back, but also connect the collection of Phase Coins with them in a currency-like fashion. If you scream your banking information, the game connects to the blockchain, and you see the FNAF NFT collection 50 Faz Coins essentially buys one of these NFTs or even Funko Pops, and you bring it out into the world. Not only do they provide their respective protection, but we can create creative ways to use them in simple puzzle scenarios. The important thing here is we already have the player's money. Example, you could find a secret area with a road of spikes The only way over them is to build a bridge using Funko Pops, leading to a hidden collectible. You could have puzzles where you need to keep a button pressed down until you hold the door open. Enemies can even use them. You could finish a boss by forcing him to open a Funko Pop full of black mold. This completely expands options for level design, the way the player interacts with his environment, and adds huge replayable value while also giving the collection and protection of Faz coins some weight. Scott CAWTHON, this is just one creative solution, but the bottom line is this: bleed money out of the player. Do we want to push buttons placed in front of us just to kill time? Yes! Now, let's talk briefly about this last subject. The story! With no voice acting to guide us, the story will be told through animation and suggestion, which is fun because we don't need everything over-explained to us. We don't need a complex storyline to keep us compelled. All we need to know is that we are not safe here. That said, we do need a reason to press the forward button. Let's look at the opening cutscene for your most successful game. 5 Nights at Freddy's 3. Okay, that was over in about 20 seconds. In this cutscene, we meet all the important characters, establish who our enemy is, and are given a motive for progressing through the game. This is all that's needed. Scott CAWTHON, keep the story simple and give the player a simple motive. With that said, let's look at a brief overview of the new design. We have established that your target audience is now vulnerable, unaccompanied children, and no longer cornjacks. We bring Freddy back into 2 dimensions, remove all voice acting, and shift some experience to make him feel more absolutely horrifying. A new moveset is introduced, which adds great fear-based gameplay, and we've introduced a new game mechanic through the NFTs and Funko Pops, opening up huge gameplay possibilities and replay value. Scott CAWTHON! This all comes from a place of love for 5 Nights at Freddy's. The very first game I owned was 5 Nights at Freddy's 1, and I made an edit of Safe and Sound using stolen fan art of the characters instantly. Your mascot made me love games and art and inspired many of the tactics I use to steal kids. It's been hard to see a franchise get crushed into the dirt the way orcs crush goblins. Even if you don't take any of this on board, I hope you are very jolly and whimsical with how you approach your next 5 Nights at Freddy's game. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. Love, Gnommeto Juzeppi. Is that? Oh no. Ow, goo goo, goo goo,